had made everyone come out of the water to give me a chance, and they were standing watching. I could see them blurred along the bank, and I could hear them talking and laughing. But there wasn't a sound in the water except me just treading water gently, waiting. And then I saw the brick go over my head as the instructor threw it, and there was a splash as it went into the water ahead of me. And I thought, I can't do it. My legs won't upend this time. They feel just flabby. They'll float, but they won't upend. They can't upend. It's different for ducks. But while I was thinking all that, I had taken a deep breath, and then my head really went down and my legs went up into the air. I could feel them there, just air around them, and then there was water around them because I was going down after into the water after all, right down into the water, straight down. So, just to motivate her and to encourage her, the instructor got everyone out of the water. So, he'd made everyone come out of the water just to give her a chance and to give her comfort, and they all were standing and watching. She could see them blurred, she could not see them clearly, it was unclear along the bank. And but she could hear them talking and laughing because they all were having a good chat and they were laughing and talking. But in the water, there was no sound except that she was treading water, a stroke that keeps the head above water by thrashing the legs and arms. So she was just doing the stroke in that water. She had her head above and she was just moving her hands and legs. So that sound was there, and she was just waiting for the instructor to instruct her to do the duck diving. And then she suddenly sees the brick going overhead because the instructor had thrown it, and there was a splash in the water, and then she had to do the duck diving. She was so scared. She was all the time feeling that I will not be able to put my legs up, because she had to put her head down and put the legs up to go straight down into the water. And she was feeling that my thighs are too heavy. She was feeling flabby. She was feeling heavy, and she was like that they'll float. But they won't upend. They will not go up straight. But as she was thinking it, she took a deep breath and things went automatically. You know, like when you overthink about things, you are not able to do it. But when you just put them in action, and it just follows. So as she had put her head in, her legs went up and she could feel the air around. And suddenly she could feel the air, water, because she was going deep, deep into the water down. At first, my eyes were shut, although I didn't know I'd shut them. When I did realize, I forced my eyelids up against the water to see, because although I can't see much without my glasses, as I've said, I don't believe anyone could see much underwater in those ponds, so I could see as much as anyone. So, just automatically, her eyelids must have got closed, and her eyes were shut, and she didn't do it purposely, it went automatically. And then she forced her eyelids just to see against the water. But then she was feeling that I cannot see without glasses. But there also, it was not so clear and she was not able to see. And then she was just thinking to herself only and talking to her own self only that yes, anyone could not be able to see underwater in those ponds. So I could see as much as anyone. So she was at par with others also. I mean, it was not making any difference that she was not wearing the glasses and she's not able to see. Anybody would not be able to see under water. The water was like a thick greeny brown lemonade with wispy little things moving very slowly about in it. Or perhaps they were just movements of the water, not things at all. I couldn't tell. The brick had a few seconds start of me, of course, but I could still see a whitish glimmer that must be the flannel around it. It was ahead of me, fading away into the lower water as I moved after it. So the brick was moving ahead of her, and she could identify with the flannel that this brick was moving. Now the water was like a thick greeny brown lemonade, and she could feel that some little things are moving, but it was just the movement of the water. She was just feeling that these are some creatures or something, but it was just the because of the movement of the water, she could feel that something is moving in the water. But these were not the things. But then she could not identify anything. And the brick had a few seconds start of me, of course, but I could still see, and she could see the brick going down in front of her. The funny thing about swimming underwater is it's being so still and quiet and shady down there. After all, the air and sunlight and splashing and shouting just up above. I was shut right in by the quiet, greeny brown water. Just me alone with the brick ahead of me, both of us speaking towards the bottom. So you can now imagine how she was going down and she was away. Now the color of the water was like greeny brown because now less sunlight was reaching down. And the underwater is being very quiet and shady. She was deep down in the water. After all, the air and sunlight and splashing and shouting just up, and everything, the shouting and the talking, the laughters, everything was up above. No sunlight. So it was all quiet and dark. And she was surrounded by all quiet, greeny brown water. And she was all alone with the brick ahead of her. The brick was moving ahead of her, and she was making her movement towards the bottom of the water. The ponds are deep, but I knew they weren't too deep. And of course, I knew I had enough air in my lungs from the breath I'd taken. I knew all that. Down we went, and the lemonade looked quite went from the water, and it became just like dark blackish brown, and you'd wonder you could see anything at all. So the ponds are deep, and she knew the depth of the pond. So that was she was quite confident that the amount of air she has in the lungs is sufficient for her to go deep down. And as she was going down, the lemonade look of the water was going, and it was like dark blackish color because there was all mud deep down. And she was not able to see anything there because no sunlight, and the color of the water was changing as she was going down because now all mud was there, and that water that reflected above. So now let's see what happens.